Hello and welcome to the Underline podcast. And I'm your host, Leonard Ondigo. Now, if you're listening to this, thank you. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. In a world where everything is competing for your attention, it means much more to me that you've decided to listen to this podcast. I have imagined this moment for a very long time. The truth is, this podcast did not begin today. It did not start this month. It did not begin this year. The idea was born sometimes back in 2023. Back then, it was just a thought, a quiet thought. One of those ideas that keep creeping into your mind. It would come to me while I was walking. It would come to me while I was walking, while I was working, while I was reading, while I was lying at night, or it kept whispering, start the podcast. But whispering is one thing. Beginning is another. For one reason or another, I never started. And life happened, work happened, a lot of projects came by, and I kept pushing this idea to the future. But if I'm also being quite honest, fear happened and self-doubt. I kept questioning myself whether I could do it. Something I've come to realize in life that most people with meaningful dreams do not fail because they lack the talent. They fail because they are hesitant, because they wait for certainty, because they convince themselves that one more course, maybe one more month, one more year, one more camera, one more microphone, one more month is all they need to get themselves ready. But I've also come to realize that readiness is a moving target. The more you wait, the more it keeps shifting the goalpost. But you will never quite arrive. I think many of us are guilty of something even deeper. We underestimate our potential. We become the harshest critics of our own selves. We convince ourselves that other people are more qualified, more talented, more experienced, more interesting, more deserving. We shrink ourselves before the world has even given us a chance. It's a strange form of self-sabotage. Sometimes we do not need enemies. Sometimes we don't need enemies. We become our own enemies. Then there is perfectionism. It disguises itself as excellence. It tells you you're simply waiting for the right moment. But beneath it, it's often fear. Fear of being judged, fear of failing publicly, fear that no one will listen, fear that nobody will care. And so we keep on postponing our dreams. We delay them, we overthink, we overanalyze, and then through these days become months, months become years, and then our dreams quietly collect dust. I know this because I lived it. This podcast should probably have existed years ago. But perhaps, it couldn't have existed then. Perhaps I wasn't ready to become the person who could host these conversations, because every delay also teaches us something. Every setback leaves a scar, and every failure gives you another story. And stories are what make conversations meaningful. And stories are what make conversations meaningful. So, here we are. Today is just not another day. Today is the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, the Underline podcast is officially live. And I honestly couldn't be happier to say those words. Now, you might be asking yourself, Leonard, why should I listen to you? And that's a fair question. There are thousands of podcasts already in the market. Thousands of interviews being conducted already. Thousands of people with microphones and doing content creation. So why is this important? because I don't want to create another highlight reel podcast. I'm not interested in the polished, successful stories that skip the difficult parts of our stories. No, I am interested in the underline, the part beneath the headline, the invisible work, the setbacks, the late nights, the impossible decisions, the sacrifices no one applauds, the moments where people almost give up. Because that is where life really happens. Success is easy to celebrate. Struggles are hard to talk about, but struggle is usually the better teacher. Every successful company has a story before it became successful. Every accomplished artist has years nobody remembers. Every respectable executive once questioned whether they were good enough. Every entrepreneur has stared at a bank account that looked very empty. Every creator has uploaded something that almost nobody watched. Those are the conversations I want us to have. The raw, honest, authentic human conversations. The conversations that make us connect with each other. This podcast is for builders, not just business builders, but builders of careers, builders of ideas, the builders of communities, the builders of families, the builders of art, builders of themselves. Because at the end of the day, we are trying to build something. Sometimes it is a company, sometimes it is confidence, sometimes it is simply a better version of ourselves. On this podcast, I'll be sitting down with startup founders, entrepreneurs, software developers, innovators, digital creators, artists, writers, and even athletes. And people whose stories deserve to be heard. Some will be well known, others you probably never heard of. But that is exactly the point. There are remarkable people doing remarkable work without the spotlight. I want to find them. I want to understand how they think, what drives them, what keeps them awake, what keeps them going when everything seems to be falling apart. We will talk about ambition, purpose, money, failure, technology, creativity, leadership, relationships, identity, the future of Africa, the future of entrepreneurship, and everything in between. These won't be rehearsed conversations. They won't be performances. They'll be conversations with people willing to tell the truth. Because truth is becoming increasingly rare. And yet, it is exactly what we need. I also hope that this podcast becomes more than something you simply listen to. I hope it becomes a community, a place where builders can recognize themselves in someone else's story, a place where someone who is struggling realizes they are not alone, a place where a young entrepreneur finds the courage to start, where a creator decides not to quit, where someone who's been doubting themselves finally say, maybe I can do this too. If even one conversation inspires one person to begin, then this podcast will have been worth creating. Personally, this podcast is also a commitment to myself, a simple promise to stop waiting, to stop hiding behind perfection, to start before I feel completely ready, because that is how almost everything meaningful begins. Not with certainty, but with courage. So whether you've been following my journey for years, or whether this is the first time we've met, welcome. I am genuinely grateful that you are here, and I hope you'll stay for what is ahead. We are going to learn together. We are going to ask difficult questions together. We are going to celebrate wins together. And sometimes we will sit together with our failures, because that is part of building something worthwhile. If this first episode resonates with you, I'll really appreciate your support. Subscribe to the podcast. Follow wherever you are listening or watching. Share with someone who is building something of their own. Leave a comment. Tell me what conversations you'd like to hear. This isn't just my podcast. I hope over time it becomes our community. Thank you for being here at the very beginning. Years from now, when the podcast has grown into something much bigger, we will be able to look back at this very first episode and remember where it all started. One microphone, one conversation, one decision to finally begin. I am Leonard Ondigo, and this is the Underline podcast, and we are just getting started. Welcome.